Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Supporting Children's Emotional Health and Well-Being During the COVID-19 Pandemic. This webinar was created by CanLearn Society and fully funded by the Alberta government to help support all of those who have been impacted by COVID-19. We understand that this has been an extremely hard year with many changes and unexpected events. Our hopes is to create monthly webinars in order to help support the community and also support each other in staying strong through this time. Today's webinar will mostly focus on children's emotional health and how you can help support your child or student through these challenging times. So tell me, in the last year, have you found that your child is struggling to manage their emotion during COVID-19? Do you feel overwhelmed and unsure how to handle this task as you yourself are trying to manage your own emotions? Our goal for this workshop is to help provide you with information and resources to help support your child's social and emotional development. Today's webinar will cover a number of different topics. First, we'll tell you a little bit about CanLearn Society, who we are and what we do in some different programs that we have. Next, we'll discuss what is emotional regulation and the different components in it. And we'll follow that up by talking about how families have been impacted by COVID-19 and what is our role as a parent or as a teacher in supporting our child through this. Next, we'll go over some skills to help support you and your child through this process and how you can teach your child to start managing their emotions. And finally, we'll go over some community resources. Let's talk a little bit about who CanLearn Society is and what we do. For some of you, you might be quite familiar with our programs, and for others, you're brand new, so welcome. CanLearn Society was actually established by parents like yourselves who saw that their children were struggling in school and really wanted to help support them and advocate for them. And so through that, we've created this non-for-profit organization, and we work in a number of different areas. First, we have psychologists and provisional psychologists who complete assessment services. We also work with pediatricians as well. We work in a number of different areas for ADHD, and we provide ADHD coaching as well as adult ADHD groups. We have some literacy programs as well as some social skills program for kids, and we also provide schools with programs as well. We work in a number of different areas, and one of the great things about CanLearn Society is many of our programs are funded, which means that schools and parents can receive some of our resources for free when it's something that they might not be able to afford. I highly recommend that you have a look at our website or email our receptionist if ever you have any specific questions about something you might be interested in. As for me, I'll introduce myself. My name is Catherine. I am a provisional psychologist, and for those of you who don't know what that is, it means a psychologist in training who's collecting her hours to become a registered psychologist. And everything I do is under the supervision of a registered psychologist as well. I've been with CanLearn for over 4 years now, and I've specifically been working in the social skills group, teaching children at school and in their home different way to manage their emotions and build friendships. And so I will be discussing a little bit with you today what I teach families and what I talk about with kids. So let's start with the basics. What is self-regulation? It's a word we use a lot, but do we actually know what it means? I like to take things in a simple format. And when I talk about self-regulation, I talk about everyday living. So it's how kids and adults manage their emotions, how they're able to still discuss things with people even though they might not get along with them. It's how they're able to problem solve. It's when they've waken up and they've had a bad day, but they still have to go to work or school and complete an exam or work on a project. Self-regulation is so important in our everyday life. and it's something that we want to help develop in our kids at an early stage. One important thing to know is self-regulation comes in different forms. So there's a sensory form where it's important to understand our environment and what our expectations are. There's the emotional side where it's important to understand different social rules and what's expected for us to do around different people. And there's also the cognitive side, which is able to problem solve when things don't go our way. What do I do? How do I manage with this? The important thing to know about self-regulation is it develops just like we learn to walk, we learn to talk. It develops through experiments around us and experiences that we do. As a child, when we engage in our environment, we learn different things. And just as we learn to walk and talk, we also learn how to manage our self-regulations. It's important that this develops with practice, and that means consistently working on it in the home and in the classroom. For some kids, this develops naturally, and for others, this is actually a really hard concept. And so it's important to support our kids through this. For kids where this is really hard, it can make it hard to do basic things like getting along with friends, going to school, completing a task. When you feel so overwhelmed with your emotions, you don't even know where to start, and it can be really hard to deal with everyday life. The good news is, just as we can teach our kids to read, we can also teach them to develop this skill through different experiences in life, but as well as modeling these examples to our kids. So self-regulation is part of overall our social and emotional learning. So interacting with others, understanding what's going on. And when we look at this, there are 5 important components that we need to understand. The first one is self-awareness. You can't fix a problem if you're not aware of it. You can't change your actions if you don't even know what you're doing. So the first step is being aware. Do I understand that when I'm frustrated, I don't make the best decisions? Do I know that when I'm upset, I need time by myself or I need to speak to somebody? Self-awareness is all about understanding your body and your reaction and what you need, because everyone's different. The second one is self-management. So now that I understand what's going on in my body, do I understand what my body needs to get back to a calm state? Do I need to talk to someone? Do I need time alone? Does my body need movement? And this is another important aspect in helping us regulate our emotion, is understanding what our body needs. Once we combine these two, we're then ready for responsible decision making. I know that when I'm angry, I don't make the best decisions. And I know it's hard for me to problem solve. So after I've been able to identify my emotions and find a way to manage them, then I know that I'm ready to make a decision or to look at the problem. I'm able to look at my different options and maybe talk to different people and figure out what are some of my options for solutions that I can do for this problem. Our last 2 involve social skills. So our first one is our relationship skills with others. Am I able to understand the difference between a friendship with my mom versus a friendship with a classmate? Do I understand the role of a teacher versus my parent? Am I able to also identify what those healthy friendships look like versus unhealthy? Great self-regulation is not only managing ourselves, but understanding those around us. And that builds into our last concept, which is social awareness. I need to understand how my actions affect others. I need to understand that when someone has a bad day, they might not say or do their best. And all of that works together to build great social and emotional learning in our kids. This is a skill that not only children need, adults need as well. I bet some of you can think of that one coworker or family member who, when they're just having a bad day, they struggle to regulate themselves. They struggle to problem solve, and they don't realize that they need to stop and take a break. They're always on the go. This is something that I talk about a lot at schools and with families. And if you've heard a couple of my other presentation, you know I've talked about the 5 core competencies before. This is super important for us to understand, because self-regulation isn't just one thing. it's components, it's different areas. In order for us to teach our kids and model this for our kids, we have to understand ourselves and break it down into those small parts on what we need to focus on. So, taking all of this information in consideration, I want to ask you an important question. How has COVID-19 impacted you and your family? Have you noticed that with all the changes going around, you've been more on edge, that your child's been having a lot of breakdowns or tantrums, that they feel extremely anxious all the time? Have you even noticed an impact in social relationships around that now it's so much harder to interact with people and everything's online, and this is extremely fatiguing? What has been going on with your family with COVID-19? And what areas do you think have been impacted the most in your life? Is it your emotions? Is it your relationships? Is it problem solving? It's important to take this time to think about how COVID-19 has impacted us because every family is different. And as much as I try to provide you with a lot of resources and information, we need to understand that it's not just a one-size-fits-all scenario. It's important to take bits and pieces that you think work best with your family and how your family has been impacted as well. So let's talk about the changes we've seen with COVID-19. The first one, which I think personally has been the biggest one, is pandemic stress. We have officially been in this pandemic for over a year, and our stress levels have been extremely high. It's important to understand that this isn't our typical stress level. It's normal for our bodies to go through moments where we feel stressed. And one thing that naturally happens is it peaks and then it goes down. But what's been going on with a pandemic is our body has been in stress mode for longer than it should be. We have a part in the back of our brain called the amygdala. The amygdala is in charge of different emotions, including fear, and it's naturally there to protect us. So think about it this way. Back in our caveman days, when we would see a bear, when there was something dangerous in front of us, our body would get us ready to stay safe. So it would either pump in a bunch of adrenaline, get our muscles tensed up so we're ready to run or fight this bear, or we would even kind of freeze up so that if we had to hide from somebody, we're able to stay very still. Now, the problem is our amygdala can't tell the difference between a bear and stress from work, stress for exam, or a pandemic. And throughout this year, our amygdala has been sending signals to our body saying we are in danger, we are in danger, we are in danger. So how has your body been reacting? Well, it's been sending high levels of cortisol to your body and adrenaline, and it constantly feels like it has to fight a bear 24/7. That is physically exhausting. It is fatiguing. It makes you more irritable. It makes it harder to sleep. These are all normal things that come when our body have been in stress for a long period of time. So if you have found that you and your family have been more on edge, more irritable, a huge reason for that could be the pandemic stress that we've been dealing with. So on top of this stress, we've been having constant changes to our policies and environment. We went through periods of online school, and now not only are you a parent, but you're also a teacher and you're with your child 24/7. Your child can't see their friends. They're feeling overwhelmed as well. Your work environment has changed, changes to schedules even. Do we even have a schedule anymore? Now that everything's online, it feels like everything's kind of mixed up into one. And then with that also comes this increased fear of our safety, of what's going to happen. Is there going to be another change? Are we going to be going in lockdown anytime soon? There's so many unknown factors that have increased our fear. And through that, there's just this constant frustration because we know that there's not much we can do. We wear our mask, we sanitize, but other than that, I really can't take any more steps to make this COVID-19 phenomenon go away. no matter how safe and how clean I am, this thing takes time. Now, unfortunately, many families have been impacted financially by this, and this in itself is such a hard burden and increased stress. Many people have lost their jobs or have gone part-time. Many people's jobs have gone online, and your entire role has changed as well. And so with these changes in our environment, with this increased fear, and with finances, now we're seeing an increase in family conflict. We are not used to being around our kids 24/7. We are not used to doing everything through this Zoom screen, and this is exhausting in itself. And so of course you're feeling more irritable. Of course you're noticing there's more fights or problems. And many families have actually indicated that with COVID-19, they have noticed things in their kid or in their spouse that they didn't even know was there before, just due to the increased time they're spending with them. And lastly, we are meant to be social humans, and everything happening online also is exhausting. We really do miss the interaction of seeing someone, even the ability to see someone's whole face. Now that we have masks covering half of our faces, expressions are hard. So the few moments you do get to see a person, it's not the same as before. These are only a few things that have impacted us during COVID-19. And maybe for your family, it's been all of these, maybe it's been even more. And with this has come this increased frustration, stress, and difficulty to manage things. So let's take a moment right now to tell ourselves that we have gone through a hard time. It is normal if things aren't rainbows and butterflies right now. And I know that this is something social media has talked about a lot, but it's important for us to really reinforce this. It has been a year of a pandemic. Your family has gone through some very exhausting things, and it is okay if things aren't as smooth as you would like them to be right now. The government of Canada has also started doing some research to see how the pandemic has been impacting families. And we're just at the beginning stages of research. It's really hard to take a full picture of how it's been impacting us on such a level. And so they surveyed several families and just asked them about their concerns for their children's physical health, mental health, loneliness, academics, social opportunities, amounts of screen time or time spent online, physical activity, and even eating junk food or sweets. And one thing that we did find is for those who had children with disabilities, the concern was much higher. So for those who were receiving extra support at school, who were seeing counselors, who had attention problems, learning difficulties, or any other disability, those children need a little bit more support and guidance and attention. And what happens is with COVID-19, when everything went online, and even now that we're back in schools, everything is so restricted with our interactions, that has really impacted those children. And parents are concerned because as much as they try to be that support and guidance for them, there's only so much that they can do. And so we've definitely noticed this specifically at Can Learn Society, because when it came to our groups, we used to do groups at school and we've transferred online, and the amount of parents that have contacted us saying we need this support, or the amount of parents that have contacted us saying we need an update assessment, we didn't even notice all these things before, it's been high. And as someone in the mental health field, this has been something that we've been dealing with in the last year, and it continues to go up. So it is normal for families to be concerned, and especially if you are a family who have 1, 2, 3, or maybe even you as a parent are dealing with a disability as well. And that has been a big thing that's impacted us. So now that we've talked about how COVID has impacted us and how there's been so many changes, I want you to think for a couple of minutes. How have these changes impacted my child? What have you noticed happening in the home, in the school, that maybe you never even realized before? Has your child been having a hard time with doing online school? Has it been hard to stay organized and scheduled? And do their schedule feel a little bit all over the place? One thing that we know is routine is so important for children, and COVID-19 throws that routine out of the window. So while your family was in this process, and while you're currently in this process, what have you been doing to stay on routine? Have you found a designated place for your family to do work and school in the house? Do you have a consistent time when you've been waking up and going to bed? A consistent time when you're doing school versus physical activity? COVID-19 has thrown our routine, even as adults, out the window, and that is a big thing we struggled with, especially for those who went from working in a office setting to all of a sudden everything online. So take this time to think about your current routine and your current routine with your child, and what has been working and what hasn't. It would be a good moment right now to even jot down some notes on what's been working and what hasn't, because this allows you to understand your family dynamic and situation better. And as we mentioned before, our first step in self-regulation is awareness. And so I want you to think about your child and your family and what's been working really well for them and what hasn't. Take this time to write a couple notes for yourself. As a parent, you are expected to do so much. A parent is a full-time job in itself. And sometimes we need a bit of a reminder of what our role as a parent is. Because during COVID-19, we started taking on all these roles, and in all honesty, we aren't designed to take on all these roles at once. So, as a parent, you are your child's safety and comfort. And because you are their safety and comfort, unfortunately, because your child feels safe, that is when all the emotions come out. I say unfortunately because it's not a pleasant thing to deal with, but it's actually a really great thing that they're able to do that in front of you and share that with you. You also spend the majority of the time with your child. I always tell families, you can meet with a counselor, you can go to a social skills program. They are going to meet with your child for 1 hour a week. The magic really happens with the person who's spending most of their time with your child, which is you and maybe their teacher as well. Through you, that is how they start to understand the world. They start to understand what is appropriate, what is expected, what are the different rules in different places. And they learn from what they see. So kids are like parrots. It's so funny. You can tell them something 100 times and they will completely miss it. But the moment they see you doing something, even if you don't want them to see it, they will actually end up copying you. They're like parrots. They love copying us. And so they actually end up learning from what they see more than just what we say. So as a parent, you are such an important model for self-regulation. And you are their understanding of the world. You are their comfort. You're the one who's showing them how to interact, and you're the one who spends most of their time with them. And so, yeah, that's an important role. It has a lot of responsibility. But I don't want us to confuse this with thinking we have to be this perfect parent who is calm at all times. In fact, I think that's actually quite unhealthy. If you're giving this image of being perfect at all times to your child, you're not really showing them how to deal with problems or that frustration is okay. And it's also important for us to normalize this as well. So I just want to take these next couple of minutes to talk about a research study that was done way back, and some of you might have heard it. It's called the Bobo Doll Experiment. And this experiment was conducted by Bandura, who wanted to see how kids react with their behaviors depending on what they see being modeled in front of them. So they took some group of kids, and for some of them, they let them observe an adult interacting with a doll quite aggressively. So punching the doll, throwing it, hitting it. And for the other group, they didn't really see much aggression with the interaction of the doll. So either the adult didn't spend any time with the doll at all, or he kind of looked and played with it a little bit, but there was no aggression. And then there was a third group as well who did not see any interaction at all with the doll. They didn't even see an adult or adult there. And so that were our 3 different groups. After that, they brought the kids inside the room with the different toys and they just observed them playing. And what they noticed is the boys and girls who saw the adult aggressively playing with the Bobo doll, they started aggressively playing too. Even more so than the group who just saw a normal interaction with the doll that was non-aggressive and the group who didn't see an interaction at all. These kids started hitting and punching the doll. Some of them got toy guns and started shooting it at them. And there's even actually videos online on YouTube. You can look up the Bobo doll experiment and you can see it for yourself. It's a little bit older, so obviously the quality isn't as clear, but it's a pretty good one to watch. So what does this experiment teach us? It really shows us how much kids model their behavior based on what they see. And this was an experiment that looked at specifically aggression, but it's not just aggression that we model. We also model with our emotions, right? Do we have emotional outbursts? Do we yell? Do we scream? Do we slam doors? What do we do as adults when we're frustrated and when we're angry? And whatever it is that we do, guess who's watching? That's right, our kids, they're watching. And even though you might not want them to copy exactly how you act, they are going to. And so it's important for us when we're teaching kids about this, that we are the models, that we are the example, and we also try to use this as well. Hey, we're all humans. There's days where things are hard, where they are very hard for us to stay calm, and we might even make a mistake. And that's when I say take that opportunity to also model what we do when we make mistakes. We own up to them, we apologize, and we change our behavior. And it's important for us to share this with our kids because adults have a hard time saying sorry to kids. And that's also an important skill we want to teach them. That there's going to be days where we aren't our best and we own up and we take responsibility for that as well. So, taking into consideration everything we've talked about what self-regulation is, how we teach it to kids, why it's important, how modeling is such an important aspect of that. How's your mental health doing? What's been going on with you? Some things to consider when we talk about good mental health is number 1, good nutrition and food. Some people, this is extremely important and they become very irritable and sensitive when they're not getting the right food. So have you been eating well-balanced meals? Do you have a regular eating schedule? Or is it just kind of snacks and meal times in between breaks and whenever it happens? Another thing to ask is how has been your sleep? Everyone is different with how much sleep that they need. But when you wake up in the morning, are you feeling constantly fatigued and irritated? Do you feel like you're getting enough sleep? And is it good quality sleep as well? Are you moving your body? Physical exercise is so important for our body. It actually helps release all these amazing things that help us focus. They help our mood. And this is so important for not only adults, but kids. All of these are important for both kids and adults. But you need to move your body actually. You need to get your heart rate up. And this is something that's important for your mental health as well. How's been your screen time? With COVID-19, everything's gone online and there's been this confusion on how much screen time is too much. What should I be doing? How do I know what is a good amount? And that's actually one thing that we're going to cover later in our webinars, but it's something to think about. Do you feel you're getting too much screen time? Are you using social media as just this kind of outlet of scrolling, and your mind is just kind of not realizing it's been 2 hours? And how has been your routine? We talked about routine. It's important not only for kids, it's important for you as well. Do you have a regular routine? Or are you still struggling maintaining that or building one in COVID-19? Good mental health doesn't mean that you are happy at all times, that you are just living the dream. That is only one side of a spectrum. Good mental health is realizing I'm going to go through a number of emotions. I'm going to have good days. I'm going to have bad days. How do I regulate myself? How do I take care of myself when those days aren't good? And how can I be content knowing that there's some days where I'm going to be frustrated and some days when I'm going to be happy? Ask yourself, how is your mental health doing? Which one of these would you like to improve in? Okay, so now you're probably asking me, Catherine, where do I start? You provide me with some great information, and you're right. I feel like we need a bit of a better routine. We need to help our mental health. Our kids' emotion have been all over. So where do I start with this? This is so overwhelming. So for the next part of our presentation, I'm going to go over some different skills that I teach kids and how you can teach them at home. I'll also talk about some different resources that you can access, whether it's through books or online. That also might be helpful as well to help build that self-regulation in your child. So let's start with the basic. Build awareness. This is one of the competencies that I talked about earlier on. This is one thing that I'm always repeating to parents: awareness, awareness, awareness. Think about it this way. If I knew nothing about iPhones or Samsung phones, and all of a sudden I notice that my battery on my phone keeps going down, 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 and I say, you know what, I'm just going to order a new battery. I'm going to replace it myself. What might happen? Well, maybe I'll get lucky and I'll do it. Completely guessing. Maybe I'll look up some YouTube videos and start learning and try to figure out myself. Or maybe I'll go in blindly and just make it worse. If you are unaware of your emotions, if you are unaware of your actions, you cannot change them. And if you try to change them without building awareness, well, you might get lucky, but most likely you might make things worse. And that's one thing that's very important. So, does your child know what mental health is? I have a really funny story where when I used to go to schools before COVID-19, one of our schools had Hats Off for Mental Health Day where the kids wore hats to support mental health. And I was super excited. And I say, hey guys, what is mental health? What are you guys working on today? And the kids, as a group, start talking and throwing different ideas. And they were describing cancer. They were describing people who go bald because they're sick and their body's fighting themselves, and how they have to go get treatment at the hospital. And that's not really mental health. Does your kid actually know what this is? And you can teach this at any age. So here's how I check in with kids. Like, have you heard of the word mental health before? How would you explain it? So get your child to explain it in their own words to see what they know. And then give them your explanation. So my explanation goes like this. You know how we have our physical health, we have our physical body. We take care of our body by making sure we got enough sleep and food and we're moving. But you know what? Sometimes our body gets sick. Sometimes there are days where we're tired or our muscles feel kind of achy. That's kind of like our mental health. Our mental health is the health of our brain, and it has to do with our thoughts and our emotions. And we take care of our mental health like our body. We want to get good sleep and food, and we move our body. But just like our body has days where it feels tired and sick, so does our brain. It has days where it feels sad, feels upset. It has maybe some negative thoughts. Sometimes our body just needs rest, and sometimes our brain just needs rest. But sometimes our body can get a little bit more sick, and it needs help from a doctor. And a doctor might give me medicine to help me get better. And just like that, sometimes my brain can feel extra tired, and it needs help from someone. It needs to talk to someone to make it kind of get better. And that's a really easy, basic way to explain mental health to your kid, no matter what age they are. The older they are, the more detail you can go into it, and you can talk about different mental health problems out there and what that looks like. But we can always just talk about it at a basic level. It's important to talk to your kids about mental health because they need to know what it is. Emotions are part of our mental health. And a lot of times people think that there's something wrong with them because they feel angry or frustrated or sad. And we really want to normalize this. So let's start by having these conversations in our family. So next, after we've talked about mental health, we want to start building an emotional vocabulary. Why do we teach this? Well, it not only helps kids identify how they're feeling, but it helps you understand what's going on, helps you identify how they're feeling, and that creates a really healthy communication between you and your child, and it also helps normalize it. This isn't just for young kids. I have worked with teenagers who struggle to identify their feelings. They'll be like, I don't know how I'm feeling. Or they'll keep using the same word over and over again. I'm just upset. I just feel upset. And there are so many emotions out there that it's important to identify them within ourselves because that helps us know what we need. It helps us be able to communicate with others as well. So let's see how well your emotional vocabulary is. I want you to try this experiment with me. You can get a piece of paper, you can grab your phone on the notes, you can even use your finger if you don't want to write anything down. But I want you to get a timer. Time yourself for 1 minute and write down as many emotions as you can in that 1 minute. If you don't want to write them down, you can use your fingers. So the rules are they can be similar emotions count. So mad and angry, those count as 2 different emotions. The only rule is that you cannot use the same word twice. So write them down in 1 minute and see what you come up with. Good luck. Okay, how many emotions did you come up with? Did you find that task pretty easy? Or was it actually more challenging than what you thought it would be? Did you find yourself kind of guided towards a specific family of emotions, so they were all within anger or happiness or frustration? Or did you write down a variety of them? I think this is important because, there's so many emotions out there. It's something that we all know about, but when it comes to actually labeling or using those words, we forget how many are out there, and there's way too many for us to list in 1 minute. So what emotions do your kids use? You can even do this activity with them and see what pops up for them, how easy or how hard it is. When I teach emotions for kids, I stress a number of different things. So number 1, all emotions are normal. Let me repeat that because it's super important. All emotions are normal. Kids often do not realize this. They say, no, I should never feel sad, or it's a bad thing to feel angry, or I've even had teenagers say, it's bad for me to be anxious or depressed. Those are specific thoughts that we want to shift because emotions themselves are not bad. Some do not always feel the best. I agree. It does not feel good to feel anxious, but that doesn't mean that that emotion is bad for me. Emotions are what make us human. They're what make us experience different things and understand different things. Sadness shows us that there's something that we care about. Anger is there when we feel things aren't fair, and fear is there to protect us. Those are all normal emotions, and we need to stress this in our family. We need to stress this in our school. We also need to stress that they happen at different levels for different people. Some people feel emotions quite deeply and some don't, and there isn't a right or wrong way to feel emotions. Just because your friend got very upset and you didn't doesn't mean that they're wrong. That is how they are experiencing it, and their experience is extremely valid. One way that I like to explain different levels is by using similar emotions. So for example, which one is stronger, tired or exhausted, worried or anxious, angry or enraged? Emotions come in families. I call them my family emotions, where they're quite similar, but they have a different name. And sometimes that could be because some versions of those are stronger. And some emotions overlap in family. So for example, hurt, some people put that with anger, some people put that with sadness. There's no right or wrong family out there, but it's important to understand that there are similar emotions. Frustrated is similar to feeling angry, or disappointed could be also combined with sadness. And it's important to understand those. You can also feel emotions at multiple times. It's not just one emotions that come. It's normal for you to feel angry and frustrated and upset. And one emotion that I really talk about with kids is grief. Do not be scared to talk about those emotions with kids. Grief is when you feel angry and sad and you miss someone and you're lonely and you're frustrated that it happened, and it's a mix of emotions, and that is very normal. Emotions aren't labeled as good or bad. Let's remove this from our vocabulary. All emotions are normal, but how we act, how we behave when we feel those emotions, that is what we need to be responsible for. That is what we need to watch out for. You are right. If you're angry and you break a window, that is not an expected behavior at all. But that doesn't mean anger is bad. It means we need to learn how to control that emotion. We need to understand our triggers. What are things that make us angry in order to control it? So we want to start normalizing emotions. We want to start involving this in our everyday vocabulary with our kids, and we want to start talking about this in our everyday vocabulary. So how do we do this? Make this fun. Kids like things that are fun. Adults like things that are fun. We don't want to sit down and just talk all the time. That can sometimes be really important for conversations, and sometimes that can just feel more exhausting. So let's incorporate emotion in our games. For those of you with slightly older kids, or some of them who are at the end of elementary, emotion charades is a great family game to play, right? So you can do this at home. You get some different sheets of paper, you write down different emotions, put them in a hat, and have each person go out, pick the emotion, and act it out. See if you can guess. This is great because number one, it helps you identify how different people might show emotion. Not everyone shows it the same. But number two, when you're the one acting it out, it helps you realize what you do or how your body shows it. For those of you with younger kids, there's a great game called Mission Emotions. It's for those who are 3 and older. And it's a really cute game about aliens who don't know emotions. And it gives you a card with a picture on it. It's a situation. And you and your child have to guess what emotion that person is feeling. So you're kind of teaching the aliens. And it's a really sweet and easy game that you guys can play. But use emotions in the games that you're playing with. Use emotions when you talk about the movies that you're seeing. I love Inside Out. It's one of my favorite movies to talk about with kids because it really normalizes those emotions. But it doesn't have to be Inside Out. Like, oh, how was so-and-so feeling in this movie that you watched? Oh, did you notice how this person reacted when this happened? And use that experience through movies or talking about even stories that you've read, or even different historical events if your child is into that, on how people felt, what was going on in their head. This helps them not only recognize how they would feel if they were in that situation, but put themselves in other people's shoes and empathize with them. As a parent, it's important for you to identify your own emotion as well and say this out loud. You know what? I feel really frustrated right now. I need 10 minutes by myself. You know, I had a really long day at work. I'm exhausted. I'm not going to be my best right now. I'm going to take some time to go for a walk. And it's important for you to identify it, not only for yourself, but to say it out loud. Allow your child to hear the emotion that you're identifying. When we identify our emotions out loud, actually, this is really beneficial. Research has shown that this helps our brain, the front part of our brain, which is in charge of logical thinking, get activated because it hears our voice, it hears it, and it says, oh my goodness, there's not a bear. I'm feeling anxious. And this is actually a really good strategy for you to use. If you're feeling overwhelmed and anxious, say you're feeling out loud and get your child to say they're feeling out loud. And kids now are super into emojis. You can even make them to draw an emoji at the end of the day on something that happened and how they felt. You can get them, if they have a phone and they're older, just log in an emoji and how they're feeling. And that's a great way to start getting them to identify and incorporate and talk about their feelings and also expand their vocabulary. Now, for some kids, it's very hard to identify their emotions, and it's even harder to verbalize it. How do I explain to an adult that I'm feeling anxious? That's such, first of all, a big word for me to use, but second of all, I don't even know where to start or what to say. And sometimes I can feel worried about sharing how I'm feeling because maybe the person around me isn't going to take it in the best way. So what do you do when you have a child or a student who has a hard time verbalizing their emotions? When kids have a hard time verbalizing their emotions, we want to create an easy category, an easy communication for them to use. So one of the really popular one in elementaries is the zones of regulations. Many schools have used this, many parents are using this as well. If you do not know what it is, it's a very simple concept. It breaks the zones down into 4 colors: blue, green, yellow, and red. And we teach students that the zones represent our energy level or how much control we have in our body. So when we're in the blue, we're feeling really low energy. We don't feel like doing much. Maybe we're tired, maybe we're sad, maybe we're sick or bored, but we're just moving pretty slow. When in the green, that's kind of our optimal learning time. It's when we have a good amount of energy. It's not really low, but it's not crazy high. We have full control. We're ready to learn. We're calm. We're focused. Yellow is when our energy starts getting a little bit higher. We're starting to lose control. We still have some, but not much. And that can look like different things. It can look like a kid who's super excited to go to a friend's house, so they're having a hard time focusing, or a kid who's super worried about an exam, so they're having a hard time staying in control. And then the last one is our red zone. Our red zone is when we are out of control. This is when we usually say or do things we do not mean. It's when we're angry, we're mad, we might hit, and we might yell. I talk about these kind of like a traffic light with kids. Green is when it's okay for us to go. Yellow is when we want to slow down. Red is when we want to stop. And when we're in the blue, we don't even want to drive our car and see a traffic light. We just want to stay home. All of these zones are normal. Again, just like our emotions, they're all normal, but some of them we want to be extra careful in, like the red zone. And some people may experience different zones for the same event. So maybe you and I both got invited to a party. You're super happy. I'm feeling anxious. I'm in the yellow. You're in the green. So it's normal for everyone to have different experiences. The reason why schools really like using zones is it's a really easy, friendly way for a kid to identify how they're feeling or that they might need a break or they might need help. So for me to come and say to you, I'm anxious, that's hard, but I can say, I'm yellow right now. I'm in a red zone. And that's me telling you, I need to stop, I need help, and I don't know how. Another activity to continue that emotional vocabulary, that awareness, is getting kids and getting even yourself to understand what happens to your body when you feel these emotions. Our body gives us different signals, and everyone's signal is different. Some people, when they're angry, they get headaches, their heart beats fast, and they start to shake. Some people, when they feel sad, they start to cry, they start to get really cold and quiet, and it feels like there's a tornado in their stomach. We want children to start understanding how their body is reacting because number one, our body gives us clues that, whoa, where I'm getting in a red zone or I'm yellow, almost red, I need to slow down. But number two, it helps us identify those triggers and become aware. So it's important for you guys as a family to talk about what gets me in the red zone, what gets me in the yellow. Is it when I'm being ignored, when someone is being mean to me? Is it just when I'm hungry and I need food or I haven't had a good night's sleep? Or is it losing a game? When we understand our triggers, it helps us be a little bit more aware of them and be able to take a step back. Yes, we still feel super frustrated, but at least now I know why that's going on and I'm able to step back and take a break from the person that I'm around. So it's important to understand your triggers. It's important just to understand your body. And as a family, you guys can even create cues for when you start to notice someone's body. So let's pretend your child gets really red when they start getting angry and frustrated, and they might not notice it, but you do. Maybe a tap on the nose, or you start pulling your ear and you're showing them that, hey, I noticed something's going on with your body. And that's our secret message between us that we need to slow down. So that's a really good way for kids to start learning. And one thing that you guys can do is even draw your bodies out. Ask your child what you think happens and get them to draw it out and draw the detail. And you can even add things. So you say, you know what? I also noticed this. Does this happen to you? Because this happens to me sometimes. And talk about it. Do we get sweaty? Do we get watery eyes? Do our eyes start to burn? Do I clench my teeth? what happens to your body. When it comes to calming down, so now that we've identified our emotions and we want to make sure we get ourselves calm, we want to understand what our body needs, there's 3 points we need to understand. Number 1, calming down is not like magic. Just because you take 5 good deep breaths, it's not going to throw the problem away, and we need to understand this, and we need our kids to understand this too. Calming down doesn't throw the problem out the window. It doesn't make things magically better. It just helps us get to a state where we can think a little bit clearer to solve the problem. Number 2, my strategy might not always work the first time, and it's important for me to have backups. Backups are extremely important for helping me calm down. And number 3, I need different options for different places. Some kids tell me they love listening to music, but I can't do that in the middle of my exam. So it's important to not only teach our kids that we need backups, but teaching them which one works for which place, what is expected in each place as well. So for our final slides, we're going to talk a little bit about calming down strategies and what we can do at home to support our child when they're going through some tough times. When we are dealing with some big emotions, whether we're feeling anxious or upset, our mind doesn't think logically. That's when our amygdala, the back of our brain, takes charge. And one thing that we want to do is we want to help bring our mind and our body, we want to help ground it and bring it back to the present. So one of my favorite activities to do is called grounding. It's very simple, and I love that you can do it everywhere. Grounding involves using your senses to help you become more present and aware of your environment. So you take a deep breath in, and the first thing you do is you look for 5 things that you can see with your eyes. I even like to challenge kids and give them a specific color to look for. So find 5 blue things around you. When we are grounding, we're not moving around the room and searching. We're kind of just staying present where we are and just using our senses to kind of look around and see. After that, we want to find 4 things we can feel, and even describing how they feel. Like, this feels smooth, this feels kind of bumpy, this feels slimy, and talk about 4 different textures that we feel around us. Is it our water bottle? Is it our pen? Is it our hair? It could be even things on us. Next, we want to see if we can find 3 things that we can hear. So this involves us being really quiet and aware of our environment. And then 2 things that we can smell. Is it our hand sanitizer? Is it our shampoo? Is it my perfume? What is it that we smell? And the last one thing that you can taste, and if the child says they can't taste anything, tell them to remember the last thing that they ate. What was that taste? Was it sweet? Was it salty? Was it crunchy? And get them to describe this. This is a great strategy because it helps keep our mind present, it helps keep it grounded, and it helps keep it focused on my body rather than what I'm upset with. And this is a great thing and a great strategy for you to use, not only when your child is dealing with big emotions, but also when they're calm, because just like practicing the piano or soccer, calming down also involves practice, and it involves getting better at it as we slowly practice it in our home. So we talked about practice, and practice means practicing a bunch of variety of ways to calm down. And there are different things that work for different people, and this is something that maybe you guys can experiment with your house to see what works. So is it drawing? For some kids, even following a tutorial because you're so focused on the shapes and what to do, you're not thinking about what's upset. Is it exercising and getting that energy out? And when we talk about our body and our body triggers earlier on, our body actually helps tell us what we need to calm down. So if you're the type of person whose body starts shaking, maybe you need to move your body. If you're the type of person whose heart starts increasing, maybe you need water. Or if you get really hot, maybe you need a shower. For some kids, it's finding a safe way to punch something, so a pillow or ripping out paper to get that aggression out. For some, it's journaling and writing their emotions down. For some, it's just stretching. And breathing is an excellent one we can use at all time because it helps get oxygen into our brain to think clearly. So don't tell your kid just take 5 deep breaths. Explain to them why we're taking a deep breath and the difference between a good versus bad breath. A good breath should be slow. It should be calm. Time with pets. listening to music, doing grounding. There's so many different activities that we can do, and it's all about finding what works for you and your kids. It really helps to have these written down somewhere because, as I mentioned before, when we're dealing with big emotions, we don't think of all the things we can do to help us calm down. So if we have a space where we can go and we see our options, it really does help us go through the process. We also want to reinforce our kids for the awesome behaviors that they do while they're learning this process. And it's important to reward them for their hard work. It is not easy to manage your emotions. It's not easy to stay calm when your brother's being annoying. And so it's important for us to reward them. A great positive behavior game that you can do in your family is get a jar, a Tupperware, anything kind of clear, and find things that you can put in it. So this one uses pom-poms, but you can use Lego pieces, marbles, whatever you have in your house. And every time you see a great behavior that a child is doing, reward them on it by putting a pom-pom or a Lego piece in the jar. And come to agreement that when the jar is full, they get to pick out their own prize. It's important for them to pick out their prize. You can give them some structure, like it has to be this amount or these are your options, but it's important for them to be in charge so that they really do feel like this is a reward that's for them and it really motivates them more. It's also important to identify what they did well and be specific. So not just good job, but wow, you were so calm when your brother was taking your homework from you. Great job with that. Thank you for coming to me and letting me know. Wow, I know that was really frustrating when your friend yelled at you. I liked that you were able to come and take some space away from them. And so reward them and be specific in your language when you're telling them what you're proud of. When it comes to calming down and dealing with our emotion, we want to take a proactive approach. We don't want to wait until things bubble up in the last minute and explode, but we want to definitely be present and aware of this before. So a couple things we can do in our house for those days where our child isn't feeling so great and it's hard to control their emotion. Number one, create a calm down space, a calm down corner, a calm down box, and make this a designated place where your child can go to calm down so they know this is their safe place. You can even put items in there, get them to pick items and use items for different senses that if you're feeling frustrated, hey, here's, your favorite squishy, here's some Lego, here's this. So now they know that when they're feeling frustrated, they have this safe space and it has all their items. They don't have to become frustrated looking for them. Number two, create open communication. So sometimes a kid doesn't want to come up to you and even talk to you when they're having a bad day or if something went bad at school. So sometimes it helps to even have like a system on the fridge, right? If it's been a bad day, then I put the red, sticker on the fridge. If it's been a bad day, I put the angry emoji on the fridge. And that's my way of telling you I've had a bad day, I need some space, I'm not at my best right now. And you can even use this open communication with them. You can have an emoji for each family member or a designated space for each family member that if they're not feeling their best, that's where they can put it. Or if they're having good days, that's where they can put it. Have your child, as I mentioned before, build that awareness by doing different activities like we talked about, the charades, drawing our body, and talking about our triggers and warning signs. When you're able to identify them beforehand, it helps to talk about it and it helps keep your child prepared. So, hey, I know when plans change, you get really frustrated. So let's make a routine then that, if a plan can change, you have 5 minutes to go to your calm down corner. That's going to be our system where you go to because I know you need some time. So you're being understanding about it as well. And if there's a change that you're already going to be aware of, talk about it ahead of time so it doesn't feel so nerve-wracking and it gives your child time to process it. Hey, with COVID-19, the government released that there might be some changes. We're kind of waiting for tonight at 4 o'clock. They're going to release some stuff, but we don't know what it is. So how can we be prepared for whatever it is that comes? What can we tell ourselves, right? And talking about using that positive language in your family. Or, hey, you know what? Mom started a new job. Now she's going to be working Saturdays. I know that's super frustrating. Mom's kind of upset about it too. But what are some things we can do to make sure we still have time for you and me together and talk about those changes ahead of time? So overall, in summary, when it comes to our kids, our actions and how we act are huge impacts. We really are models for them, and we want to model are learning as well as we're teaching them. We want to use the same language as them as well. So if they're using emotions, use it too. If they're using zones or colors, use it too. And we want to be patient with them. This isn't a process that just overnight gets better. I want you to think about how old you are right now and how many years you've spent building habits and routine and how hard it is to break. And just as it's hard for you, it's also hard for your child as well. They're used to reacting in a specific way, and this is their only way of knowing how to react. So this takes time, and we want to be patient. But we also want to praise them when they do amazing things, and we want to celebrate their successes, no matter how big or small. And that's the part of the process, is that we're learning together. We make mistakes together, we own up together, and we also celebrate our successes together. So our last couple of slides for our presentations goes over some different resources. I'm not going to go in detail over all of them. I'll just quickly touch base on some of them. And that is some resources that you can do to help your child. So number one, there are some programs out there when that comes to help supporting your child's social and emotional growth. And so we'll start by talking a little bit about that. So our first program is with Can Learn Society, and we teach kids different social skills and emotional regulation. And we actually have different ways of teaching this. So number one, we have an online one-on-one program where your kid meets with a facilitator one-on-one once a week for up to 10 weeks. And they learn about different important topics and managing their emotions and building healthy friendships. And the other one is we've just started actually a program with school. So something similar, but we meet virtually with the classroom, and with the help of the teacher, we teach these skills as well. So that's actually something that we do, and it could be worthwhile to look into. Both of these programs are funded, which means they are free, but there is a wait list. So if this is something you're interested in, I do recommend you go to our website. I also have our program coordinator's information at the end of our slide, so you can definitely email her. The other one is Foothills Academy. They have a variety of different groups that they've done. It has changed with COVID-19, so it is worthwhile to go on their website. But I do know they have a group online right now for parents with kids with LD or ADHD, as well as with some kids who are transitioning into junior high. The Foothills one, unfortunately, does have a fee, and so that is something to look into as well, but you can get more information on their website. So the following information are a couple of book resources for you and your family, especially for you with younger kids. These are great stories to share and to talk about and worthwhile for you to look at. There are also some great websites with great resources on managing emotions. Some are specific to anxiety, some are self-regulation, some are socially dealing with others, and these would be great for you to look at depending on what your family might need. There's also some great applications out there, and if you're if your child, or even if you are someone who typically is on your phone, let's be productive about it. Let's use some amazing things out there that people have developed. So Smiling Minds is a great mindfulness app for kids. Rooted is a great app for, I would say, like preteens to adults, and this one's specifically on anxiety and understanding about anxiety. Dailyo is an app that focuses on tracking your daily emotions. And there's lots of other different apps on there on helping calm down, listening to meditations that would be worthwhile for you to look at. Finally, if you feel that, you know what, my mental health isn't where I want it to be, I'm struggling. And that takes a lot of bravery to admit. And COVID-19 has really affected me and my family. And this is something that's hard for me to go on my own. There are always counseling options for you to look at. Now, we know that counseling isn't always affordable for all families. So some of these places offer a couple of free sessions. Some of them offer one, and then they provide you with resources. Some of them also provide a sliding scale fee. So depending on where your family's at income-wise, they can accommodate the fee as well so it fits for you. So these are also important things to know. And finally, it's important to talk about sometimes we have mental health emergencies, just like we have physical emergencies. And Calgary and Alberta has some resources for us if this is something that we are going through. So if you yourself are going through something, you're having thoughts, you are concerned about suicide or about a family member, the Distress Center is something that's super great resource to look at. There's also South Calgary Health Center, where they have an area specifically for mental health that you can go to. Eastside Family Center provides you with one free counseling session, and they look at different resources for you. There's also helplines. If you don't want to go somewhere, you can always call someone. And for those of you with teenagers, there's Calgary Connect Teens, where you can call or text someone if ever you need to speak to someone. This brings us to the end of our PowerPoint presentation. Because this presentation is pre-recorded, unfortunately, I am unable to take any questions. However, I did place my email at the very end of this PowerPoint, and you are more than welcome to send me an email. It's cmasou@canlearnsociety.ca to ask any questions. I also put in there our intake coordinator's email. Her name is Jamie, and she can answer specific questions to any programs that you might be interested at CanLearn. Thank you for spending time with me today and for learning, and I hope that you get to use some of these resources with your family. So we are wrapping up at the end of our webinar. I hope that this has been beneficial and that you've learned something about yourself or your family through us talking about this. This is such an important topic for us to keep talking about. If you wanted to know specifically about our programs and the social skills program that I mentioned, you can email our coordinator. Her name is Jamie, and her email is on our PowerPoint. I also put my email on there as well if you did want any information from me. And so my name is Catherine again, and that is my email as well. Thank you so much for giving us the time and for allowing us to share our knowledge with you. And if you have any specific questions or any future topics that you might be interested in, we would love to hear from you. So you can either email me or Jamie.